minute, actually. Quick check of what time it is. It's another acoustic alternative session at Grove Studios in Ypsilanti. I just showed my guest the studio for his first visit, and it's an impressive place. If you're in a band or if you're a DJ or a podcaster like myself and you're looking for a place to do the sort of thing you like to do and not try to annoy your neighbors while you're doing it, I think Grove Studios in Ypsilanti is an excellent choice, very affordable, 24/7 operation. You can use a keypad and code that they give you when you come in and get yourself in at any time after you book your session, and you can book your session online. Look Grove Studios up and check them out. My guest today is somebody who has actually listened to my podcast, which is, I'm going to say, a little rare, actually.
It shouldn't be.
I know it shouldn't be, and I appreciate that you do, Steve. Steve Taylor is here. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me, John. It's great to be here.
Great to meet you in person, finally. We've been Facebook friends for a bit.
We have,
You've sent me CDs. Here is your CD collection. We'll display some of these here on the cameras.
All right.
So that back when I was doing some radio at WHFR, I had the opportunity to play some of your music on the air there.
Thank you.
And it's about time we got together and met and talked about your life and your career and your music and all the things that make Steve Taylor a musician.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for doing this podcast, because I think it's a great resource. And like I said, I discovered it when you posted the episode you did with Glen Phillips.
Oh, cool.
And that led me into it, and then I just started binging them, and it was a bunch of my friends that have been on your show, so it was great to listen to.
Very nice. Because we were kind of pre-sound checking, and now you're facing me and not the microphone.
I should be like this to talk, shouldn't I?
That's much better.
Yes. Yeah.
We can catch that now as opposed to later. So let's talk about your music and you after you play a song.
Okay, that's a good idea. I'm gonna start off a song here and get this harmonica happen.
I don't know that we've had a harmonica yet, have I?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I'm gonna have to lose the headphones.
That's okay. I got the sound check going. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
What song are you going to perform?
Well, I'm going to tell you, this is a song that's from our last record, which was called "Earn Every Scar." And it's, if you follow me at all on social media, you'll quickly ascertain that I'm no fan of winter. I'm more of a summer person, and what I do every year is I grow this ridiculous beard. So I stop shaving the very first time it snows.
Oh.
And I don't shave for the entire winter. And then I wait for that first really nice day, where the sun comes out and it's about 60 degrees and you can hear the snow melting. And I know that's the end of winter, and then I feel like it's safe to shave off.
You're pretty sure we're done at that point.
I hope, yeah. That I have to make sure it's safe. I can't have my cheeks exposed to snow.
Have you noticed the shift though? Like it's definitely shifting into it starts later, ends later.
Oh, it's definitely. Yeah, weather's a big topic for me.
Yeah, we may call the seasons where they fall on the calendar, but that isn't where they are happening.
Especially in Michigan. It's
That's not what's happening.
Results may vary.
Yes. Song title again. I'm sorry.
This song is about the first warm day of spring, and it's called "I Love You Like the First Warm Day of Spring." It goes like this. I love you like the first warm day of spring, as the sun shines upon the yellow grass. Trees begin to bud and the birds begin to sing. I love you like the first warm day of spring. I love you like the last day of school, when you walk out of class into the sun. You could play the princess and I could be your fool. I love you like the last day of school. I love you like the changing of the leaves, walking softly through a gentle autumn breeze. Just one kiss from you and I'll feel it in my knees. I love you like the changing of the leaves. I love you like the soft Christmas snow, when it's early but the sun is going down. When the day is finally done and I am coming home, I love you like the soft Christmas snow. love you like the first warm day of spring, when the edges of the lake still have ice. I can feel your warm embrace, and how your lips will taste when I hold you in my arms tonight. I love you like the first warm day of spring, when the sun shines upon the yellow grass. And I smile as I drive, 'cause I know that you are mine, and the wind moves the empty branches as I pass.
Lovely. First Warm Day of Spring. Steve Taylor's here from Steve Taylor 3.
Yes, thank you.
This is the album you can find that on. Steve is my guest today on Acoustic Alternatives from Grove Studios in Ypsilanti. And yeah, that's a good one. And
thank you.
You said this was the most recent album. I thought this was the most recent.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't say the most recent. That was an album, the previous one that we released in 2020. Our most recent album, you're right, is Travel Light, which came out in 2022.
Very well. We'll get to that in a short while.
Yeah.
Let's go back, way back to young Steve Taylor.
Okay.
Let's
go back there.
Before we Googled, and we would have found Steve Taylor from the Christian rock band scene, who was born in 1957. Clearly not you.
Not me. No, exactly.
You're not that old. Where did you grow up? And
I was born in Royal Oak and grew up in. We lived in Royal Oak, and then my dad was a physician, and he was drafted into Vietnam and got a deferment, and we lived on a Air Force Base in Oscoda for the time I was 0 to 4, and we moved down and they bought a house in Beverly Hills.
Okay.
And so I grew up in Birmingham.
Strangely, second guest in the last couple of weeks, Annie Capps also grew up in Beverly Hills.
No kidding.
went
Wow.
to school there. Though she went to all girls schools, so
Okay.
Not a chance you went to the same school, pretty
Probably
sure.
not. Probably not, no.
Unless you did something I don't know about it. No, okay.
Yeah, all public schools.
Okay, gotcha. And what kind of things were you doing as a kid?
Just playing with Star Wars figures, and that's kind of was a big part of my childhood. I had a real active imagination, and I think for me, music was the thing that bridged the childhood with, kind of coming into young adulthood. Was the music kind of brought me out of it, I think. I was definitely an imaginative kid. I liked drawing and I liked playing, and kind of spent hours in my room just kind of with the Legos and all that kind of stuff.
So a creative kid.
Yes, I think so, yes.
Always thinking about how to make something.
Correct.
And eventually that turned into writing songs. When did you start writing songs?
I probably started writing songs, or trying to, when I was about 12.
Really?
And I didn't even play an instrument. Well, prior to being 12, I started when I was 12, but I didn't play anything prior to that. But I would just try to make up words and try to put them. Sometimes I would just take existing melodies and rewrite them.
So Weird Al.
Kind of like Weird Al, but my songs weren't funny.
Okay.
It was just it was an exercise, I think, what it was. It was sort of a stepping stone. It's sort of using the template of an existing song. But and the first instrument I ever learned was bass guitar when I was 12 years old, because my friends and I wanted to start a band and nobody played bass.
Seems to be the problem.
Yeah.
Finding a good bass player.
I tell all my students, if you learn to play bass, you'll never be without a gig.
So you can do bass and guitar still, I assume?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I started on bass, and that was the first instrument. And there was a Motley Crue video on MTV called Looks That Kill. Mm-hmm. And I saw Nikki Sixx, and I thought, I got to play whatever that guy plays. And it turned out he was the bass player, also the songwriter, ironically. So
that's true.
Yeah, so really that was my entrance. I just started on bass guitar, started taking lessons at a music store on Woodward Avenue. And I took lessons for 2 years until the store went out of business.
Uh-oh. Was it your fault?
It was not my fault.
Okay.
No,
good.
but it's a flower shop now and has been for the last 35 years or so.
Did you ever pick up other instruments besides bass and guitar?
I did. Well, I started on bass when I was 12 until the music store went out of business.
Yes.
And then I taught myself guitar from what I learned from bass. The only problem was there was no internet obviously back then. The bass only has 4 strings, as you know. The guitar has 6. I tuned the entire guitar to the 5th fret.
Oh.
Which doesn't work, because there's 1 string in the guitar that's tuned a half step lower. So I had unbeknownst to me, I had invented a tuning that wasn't real. So for about 3 months, I had all these chords worked out. And then one of my friends picked it up and said, "What'd you do to this? This isn't tuned right." So that was my entrance into guitar.
You should just make it a 4-string guitar.
I really should have.
Could have.
And then at 15, I started teaching myself piano.
Okay.
Yeah.
Too bad we don't have one of those here.
I know, that's right. People always ask me, they go, "Why don't you play piano more at your gigs?" And I always say, it's too heavy.
They're too heavy.
It's too heavy.
Unless you want to do the Ben Folds thing and drag it around everywhere you go.
That's right.
And he does.
It's amazing.
It is pretty amazing. All right,
Yeah.
so who would be, besides Nikki Sixx, which is a strange influence for the way you sound today,
I know.
who would have been the influence on the sound you chose to create for the Steve Taylor sound?
That's a great question because it's really weird, like you said, because I grew up on Van Halen and Motley Crue and Bon Jovi and all these.
You
great
mentioned that
hard
in a
rock
song on
bands.
this album.
That's right. But when I started writing songs, they didn't come out like that at all. I don't know really where it came from, but I always kind of, when I started writing songs, they always kind of had this sort of Americana country vibe to them. And but once I really started getting into music, and I mean, I was obviously a huge fan of the Beatles. Everybody is.
You hope so, anyway.
Yeah, they're one of the best. And then, I mean, when I was in high school and I was getting out of, I was expanding my musical horizons, and I started to get exposed to sort of REM and the Replacements and the Pixies, and and then when I got into college, for me, like the bands that were really influential to me were like Toad the Wet Sprocket and Glen Phillips, and Soul Asylum. Dave Pirner was a big songwriting influence, and Evan Dando from the Lemonheads. I went to school in Boston, so I got to see Evan Dando's solo acoustic sort of at different places, in Boston in the mid-90s.
Nice.
Yeah. So those are the guys that were probably the biggest influence on my songwriting.
So you could have turned out to be an alt rocker, but you're still not quite.
It wasn't. I don't think I was cool enough.
You could be. I mean, you have the look. You could be an alt rocker.
That's true.
So, all right. So then you eventually graduated. Not graduated. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I love all the music you mentioned too. I mean,
it's good stuff.
Absolutely. But then there's a turn that goes towards the singer-songwriter scene and makes you feel comfortable. It's just that's your comfort zone.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, right after college, I moved back to Michigan from Boston, and I joined an alternative rock band called the Voodoo Hippies, which I played in for about 10 years.
I have that in my notes.
Oh, good, yeah.
After you graduated from Berklee, apparently.
That's right, yes.
I didn't know you went to Berklee until I looked that up.
Berklee College of Music, which a lot of people, when they hear Berklee, they immediately think Berklee in California.
No.
This was Berklee spelled with 2 E's. It's in Boston.
Yeah, when I talk to musicians, when I say Berklee, that's what I mean.
That's what you mean, yeah. But I had relatives that still thought I was in the West Coast.
Oh, no. No.
Yes.
It's a great school of music who I've had several guests that have come through, whether graduates or attendees. Liz Longley, Seth Clear, several, again, that have been on the podcast are definitely from that school of thought. What did you learn that you've carried forward? What kinds of things are you still using from that education?
It's a great question because Berklee is a really interesting place. It's one of the only places in the world where you can go and actually get a degree studying popular music, because most other places are conservatories. It's all classical, and at Berklee, one of the things I really responded to is they kind of force you to be a well-rounded musician. You have to learn a little bit of everything. The drummers have to take a little bit of piano, and they don't really like that. But
it's a percussive instrument. You have to.
Exactly. And they want everyone to understand theory in a very specific way, which I think is good. I learned a lot about, they made us take music business classes and arranging classes and ear training classes. So my time there, I think, was well spent, and I learned a lot, a lot that even some is still sinking in, because sometimes, especially with music, you might learn things, but it might take a while to really apply it,
As an independent musician, that business class is probably coming in pretty handy right now.
Exactly,
because you didn't know you needed to be more than a songwriter and a singer, right?
That's correct.
You didn't know you needed to manage your own websites and, post your stuff on all the social media and everything that goes along with not just playing songs.
Right.
There's so much more to it. People don't even think of that half the time.
Yeah.
So.
Even the songwriting department when I was there was geared more towards writing songs for other people. It wasn't quite geared towards singer-songwriters yet.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. And obviously back then there was no internet.
Yes.
So it was a different world.
Different, yes, very different. So you also went to Wayne State University. Was that before Berklee or after?
That was after. I went to Berklee right out of high school.
Okay.
18 years old, and then and after I'd graduated Berklee and I'd moved back to Michigan, I was here, back for a couple of years, and just decided maybe how hard would it be to get a master's. And so I didn't really make the decision to get a master's. I made the decision to go back to school and take some classes.
And did you finish?
I did, yeah.
What's your degree?
I got a master's degree in music theory.
Very nice.
Yeah, which was great. I just wanted to learn as much as I could, and I enjoyed my time there.
So in addition to performing your own music, you are also a teacher, it sounds like.
I am, yes, yeah.
What else do you do besides the teaching and the performing?
Well, that's a great question. I teach private lessons, which I've always done since I graduated college. I've taught mainly guitar and piano. But I teach, ukulele, saxophone, cello, violin, and sometimes I've had students that are interested in songwriting and they just want to work on songwriting. So I've made myself kind of a one-stop shopping for the families that I work for. sometimes they'll start on piano when they're young and they get into high school and they decide they want to play guitar. And I said, switch to guitar.
You can do this.
Yes. So I've always done a lot of private lessons, and I always have done it the same way, which is I drive house to house. Do that kind of thing. Yeah.
They're comfortable that way.
And I've always taught in private schools because I don't have a teaching degree. I have a degree in songwriting from Berklee, and I have a master's degree in music theory. I do not have a elementary education degree, which you need to teach in a public school.
That's very true. Though you could sub with your degree. You could sub in any school and make probably a lot of money on a daily basis.
Right.
But not necessarily teaching music, teaching other things.
That's right. Yeah.
So the Voodoo Hippies came when you moved back.
Correct.
Right? So you're just finished with Berklee. You're going to Wayne State. You're down now with Voodoo Hippies. You get a chance to open for from big bands. I read anyway.
Yes.
Oasis, really? You opened for Oasis?
It was incredible because the Voodoo Hippies were already established as a band in Detroit before I joined. They needed a bass player, and they expanded to a 5-piece. And the first big show I did with the Voodoo Hippies was we opened up for Grand Funk Railroad at Pine Knob.
Nice.
And I, like everybody, grew up going to concerts there. So to be able to open and be on that stage as a performer was incredible.
I bet.
And then and then I think it was the next year, Oasis was playing the State Theater. They call it the Fillmore now, but back then it was known as the State Theater. And
it was Clubland at one point.
Oh, that's Clubland. I forgot about Clubland.
I danced there when I used to dance. I remember dancing to Nine Inch Nails there, actually.
Wow.
Go ahead, sorry.
I think we're probably right around the same age.
I'm a little older than you. Not by much.
Not much.
By 5 years, I think.
But they must have booked it because the week that they played there, they were the biggest band on the planet. Yeah. And it was completely sold out because it's not that big of a place. No. At that point, they probably could have played the Palace, but they must have been in place because I remember Wonderwall was gigantic that week. So that was incredible. And the Gallagher brothers already had a reputation for being volatile. So we were told not to look at them, not to talk to them, But we played our set opening up for Oasis, and they stood in the wings of the stage and watched us the entire time. And then, afterwards we ran back to our dressing room and we closed the door. And then all of a sudden, a few seconds later, we heard this. And we were like, oh, you go, and opened up the door, and there was Noel Gallagher.
Wow.
And he just said, "Great show, lads. Great show."
Wow.
He said, "Thanks, Noel."
Wow.
Yeah, couldn't have been nicer. And it was an incredible experience, especially one to have at 23 years old. I think that's how old I was at the time.
Absolutely. Especially, again, given the reputation of them not being the nicest folks in the world.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cool memories.
It was a good time. It was, like I said, I was in that band for 9 years. And in that time, we got to do a lot of touring and a lot of opening for national acts, which was easier to do back then.
Yeah.
Not
so.
Not so.
Everything's different now.
Yeah. Everything is different.
Steve Taylor is my guest on Acoustic Alternatives today. We're at Grove Studios in Ypsilanti. Would you like to do another song before we continue?
I would love to do another song.
Please
do. This is a great setup, and I'd like to do. I'm going to do this song that's from our very first record.
Okay, take off the headphones again because we have another harmonica solo.
Harmonica back on here. But I'll tell you the story. This is an interesting story.
On the microphone would be helpful.
There we go. There we go. The writing of this song and the sort of inspiration for this song. This is a song from our very first record we did with the Steve Taylor 3. And the song is called Uncommon Places. And I wrote it, I have 2 boys. They are 17 and 14 now. But at the time, they were much smaller. And they were babies. And we were heading up north on a vacation. And we got on 75 and started driving north. And I was driving, and my wife was riding shotgun, and they were both in the back seat, strapped in like little astronauts. And I remember just looking in the rearview mirror right as the sun was setting, and they were both just asleep, just with the most beatific looks on their faces. And it was one of those moments that I just wanted to hang on to it for as long as I could. So I wrote this song as a way of preserving that memory, so that when I hear it, I can imagine that feeling and see that image in my mind.
Nice.
So that's sort of the inspiration, the writing of it, and this was why I thought this might be interesting, especially for you, John, which is a student of mine, this is many, many years ago, had given me a CD one day, and he said, I think you'd like this guy. He's a songwriter, and he's like you. And he gave me a CD, and it was Griffin House's album, Lost and Found. So recent guest on, or not recent, but a guest on Acoustic Alternatives.
Somebody who's incorporated me into one of his songs, yes, which is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me.
And I thought that was incredible too, that he name dropped you in a song. I was like, I didn't know that until I heard the podcast. So if you haven't heard that podcast, anyone listening to this podcast should go back and check out, the other podcasts, because they're all fantastic. They're great interviews. But I bring this up because I put the album in my CD player, and the second song on that record is called Ah Me. And it starts with this drum beat, which is, sometimes people call it the train drum beat, and I listened to just that drum beat, and then I hit stop because I got the idea for the song I'm about to play just from that drum beat, and I didn't want to hear the song because I wanted to go home and just write to that drum beat.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Song title again is what?
The song title is Uncommon Places. All right. Full moon, purple sky, amber waves go rushing by. Out the window of the car, while my children are asleep, safe and sound in the backseat. And as I watch the fading twilight dancing on their faces, I'm finding that the best things in life come from these uncommon places. Past few years, I've been knee-deep in wind-up toys, getting used to all the noise around here. And I know that you have been carrying a heavy load, thought you had to do it all on your own. Can't you see I'm not going anywhere? And I will always love you, I always will be there. These uncommon places, these uncommon places. From the moment we're born to the moment we die, there's a million little moments, don't let them pass you by. If the devil's in the details, then forget what you can see, 'cause what makes us who we are the spaces in between. Just a look and no words exchanged, but in that moment something changed. And as I'm running round and round in life's meaningless races, I try to stay in touch with the truth that can be found in these uncommon places, in these uncommon places. Looking at those faces in these uncommon places. Full moon, purple sky, amber waves go rushing by.
Uncommon Places, Steve Taylor from Steve Taylor 3, or his solo work as well, here on Acoustic Alternatives. And again, we're at Grove Studios, and I'm going to give them a plug because they are so kind to me. They were the ones who encouraged the whole idea of a podcast in the first place. And without them saying, hey, be a guest on our podcast, we want you to do your podcast here. Okay, let me try it out. And so became kind of hooked coming in here and feel comfortable. And I think you would too if you're a podcaster or a band looking for a place to play. You saw it, Steve.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Pretty cool place. So check out their website. I don't have it memorized, even though I look it up all the time, but it's simple as going Grove Studios, Ypsilanti, and you'll find it pretty easily. Thank you for playing that. And the stories behind the songs are always important I think, for people appreciating, the song a little bit more.
I think so too. I've always enjoyed that aspect of songwriting.
And performing too. When you're out when you're playing a bar, it's very unlikely you're going to try to tell the story about the song.
That's true.
However, if you're getting into a listening room, and I know you do those as well, you can give those little backstories and connect with the listeners. Do you find that that's the case when you're performing, that you get more people coming up to you at a listening show than you do in a bar because they're actually
That's absolutely true. Yes.
You're getting the gist across.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just sounds like, oh, that sounds like something. They're not really picking up on it.
That's one of the things I like about doing songwriter rounds.
Oh, okay.
Is having the opportunity to tell a story and then play the song. And you're right. I think people connect more to the song when they hear why you wrote it or what it's about.
Also, sometimes you want to let them interpret it themselves, though.
That's a good point.
Depends on the song.
That's very true.
If you've written a vague song about nothing particular, but you know what it's about, sometimes it's best to let them think, oh, that's about my dog, when it's really about your grandmother.
Right.
So,
true.
We left off with the Voodoo Hippies.
Yes.
You went solo at some point, about 2005 or so? Is
That's
that about
correct.
right?
Yeah, the band, we ended in 2004, and then in 2005 was when I played my first solo acoustic gig, which I was really, frightened to do. I'd never done it. I'd always played in bands. And the idea of going up in front of a room full of people by myself and playing, really, I was like, I didn't know if I could do it. And the thing is, when you play at a bar, as soon as they turn off the house music and you start playing, I mean, all eyes immediately go on you. And it's when you're playing with a band, you got a drummer behind you and you've got this power. It was just me and a guitar, and that was kind of, I did my first one of those in 2005. And it was a great learning experience, and honestly, it really reinvigorated my enthusiasm for music because it was so much freedom all of a sudden. I could play anything I wanted. I didn't have to check with anyone. I could change the key. I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah, no, don't need to call an audible. You just go.
Just do it. You just do it.
Where was that first solo gig?
The very first solo gig I played was a place called Gus O'Connor's in downtown Rochester. Now it's just called O'Connor's.
Yeah, I remember that place.
And the owner liked me a lot, and they kept calling me and kept having me back, and my name got passed around, and all of a sudden I was really busy playing solo acoustic gigs.
Yeah, I mean, you've been part of the music scene for almost 20 years as a solo artist, which is a long time. We're going to talk about this. You're up for some Detroit Music Awards in the country category. Now, your roots are definitely not country. We talked about Motley Crue being, one of the reasons.
True.
You're listening to the new album, you name drop rock bands that you listened to in high school.
Yeah.
You're not really a rock artist. You're not really a country artist, but you're up for country music and Americana, which makes much more sense to me. But the Detroit Music Awards, he's up for Outstanding Vocalist, Songwriter, Americana Group, Americana Recording, Instrumentalist, and Country Recording.
Yes.
High five. Congratulations. That's
you.
Pretty awesome.
It's an honor. It really is.
I mean, I'm part of the process. So there's 3 phases to this thing. You have 10 people, pick 10 things, whether it's a record, a person, whatever. Throw it in the category. Okay, then the next phase is pick 3 of your favorite of these categories. Okay, then it's now you're actually voting. Like, you made it all the way through.
It is a process that a lot of people don't understand. And making the final ballot is a huge honor because it's not easy to do because there's so many talented people in this town. So just to have your name in the mix, I think is really an honor unto itself. But to have this many nominations is great.
But if we'd met for the first time,
yes,
and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" and you'd say, "Oh, I play music." What kind of music? This is a normal conversation between non-music people.
Yeah,
you would say,
I always say Americana.
Then how the hell are you in a country category?
Well, that's just for the single. Yeah, I don't know.
But still,
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. But obviously there are some crossover between the genre of Americana and the genre of country. So our album is up for Best Americana Album, but our Christmas single, was put in the country category. I'm not really sure why. I'll take it.
You're not complaining.
They could put me in any category they want.
Yes.
I'd be honored.
You don't typically play country bars, so that's why I was like, okay, I'm just confused by the whole thing. But again, congrats.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you were playing solo. You graduated actually, it sounds like what I've read, the band formed itself without you asking.
It really did.
Tell me that.
It's an interesting story because I was playing bars solo, and my good friend Brian Frank, who I have known since high school, and he kept saying he had a drummer that he played with in another band named Kerry Weaver, and they weren't doing anything. We'd all played in original bands. All our original bands had broken up, and they weren't playing at all. And they said, "We want to come play with you at some of your acoustic gigs." And I said, "Yeah, we'll do that." But I never followed up on it, and I think they ran out of patience. So I was playing at a bar called Dick O'Dow's in downtown Birmingham one night on a Wednesday, and they just showed up. They didn't ask me. They didn't tell me they were coming. They showed up, and they started setting up behind me. And my drummer actually built a drum kit, a small kit. He took a floor tom, flipped it over, made that his bass drum. He built this tiny drum kit. They started setting it up, and all of a sudden I turned around and said, "All right, let's do this."
And now their names are on the records.
But the funny thing about it was we had a great time, and we played, I think, for 2 years before we ever rehearsed. we would just gig.
Yeah.
We just do 3 sets and we
That's
just make
funny.
it up as we went along. And at the second gig, this is another thing that they did to me. They decided to call the band the Steve Taylor 3 because they knew I would never go for it. So they showed up with T-shirts and posters that had the band name and Blowsin' on it, and I was just like, I don't even know if I want to be in a band called the Steve Taylor 3, and that's my name.
But you are. You actually kind of probably need it because of the other Steve Taylor and the fact that your name is rather common. It's hard to
very
find
common.
you.
It is. There's a lot of Steve Taylors. We should start a club.
So there's less Steve Taylor 3s, and that's actually not a bad thing.
I always tell people if they're looking for me online or looking for our music, search the band name or
Yes.
search the album name, because if you search my name, it's going to be way too hard to find. Too broad, exactly. Too many of us.
Yeah, there's a few John Bommaritos. There's a car
there?
salesman in Missouri.
Oh,
Actually,
really?
Griffin House took a picture of the license plate, like
The frame?
Yeah, the frames. He's like, hey, Bommarito, is that you? Like, no. That's not me, but I'm aware of that gentleman.
Ah, so you know my pain.
Yes, I do. I mean, Bommarito's common Italian name, sort of, anyway.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not just 3. Sometimes other people become part of the band. I've seen video with...
That's true. I mean, we've always kind of kept that as an open thing. And we played with a pedal steel player for a long time named Larry LeBeck. And people all goes, well, your band's called the Steve Taylor 3. And I always say the Ben Fold 5 was a trio. Like it's so sometimes we do 4, sometimes we have. When we did our album release party for the Tennessee sessions, we had our pedal steel player, we had a 4-piece horn section and 2 backing vocalists. So we were the Steve Taylor 10 then.
Yeah, 3 plus 1 plus 7.
Right.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. I think that's part of the reason why we usually spell out 3 rather than putting the number 3, because it's less about the number and more about that's just the name of the band.
Yes. Maybe you can say you play 3 instruments, and that's why you call like Ben Folds, it was 5 because of the 5 fingers, I believe. That's why.
Is that why?
Pretty sure.
Yeah. But it's interesting because Brian and Carrie were the ones that we just been playing covers in bars. We were just doing it for fun, and they said, we want to start working on original music again. We want to make an album.
Cool.
And I said, that's great. I've got a bunch of songs that I never had a chance to record. And they kind of looked at each other and looked back at me and they said, we don't want to work on old songs. We want to write brand new songs. And I said, then we'll write brand new songs.
What'd you do with the old ones?
That's a good question. If you want to fast forward to 2020,
I just pushed a button.
you just did it. Well, it's funny because obviously we hit the pandemic and
What are you talking about? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
so I'm in flashbacks from it,
Yeah, I know.
But we put our album out, Earn Every Scar, on March 7th of 2020. And it was the week before the world shut down.
Yeah, I was the following week at St. Andrews Hall watching Howard Jones and then not ever seeing anything again for a long time.
That's right, yeah. And we made it's probably our fault because we had T-shirts that said Summer Tour 2020.
Oh, thanks.
With a list of all the festivals we're going to play.
Great.
You can find those on eBay now for cheap because every single,
Canceled.
all canceled. So when I was stuck at home, all my gigs were canceled. I couldn't teach private lessons, I teach at a school, and we kind of did some virtual stuff for the rest of that year. But really, I was just stuck at home. And I had recorded a solo album in 2005 called And So On. And I, use this thing called a digital audio workstation, abbreviated DAW. And it's basically, you can record 12 tracks and you could burn straight to a CD. I mean, it's 20 years outdated now as far as technology goes, but I still have it.
Yeah.
So I went in my basement and I had some demos on there that I had done, and I just kept adding instruments, to these recordings of songs that I had never released. And finally I decided, I'm going to put that out just as a little, people are doing it all the time now where they're recording albums in their bedrooms, at home. So I thought these are good songs and I'd like to share them with people. So I just kind of put out a little solo album and I called it Beside Myself.
What do you know?
Hey!
There it is, available for the camera. Let's put this one down, put Beside Myself.
There you go.
And we got ourselves to that part of the story.
That's right. And you can see that underneath the CD there's a picture of what my studio, I'm using air quotes when I say studio because it's literally the basement under my basement stairs where it's all my recording gear is set up.
Yep.
You can't really get more than one person in there.
I do see it. Very nice. If you want to see it yourself, CDs are available at your website, which is, you don't have one. Darn it.
That's right.
We're going to find one for you.
I'm working on putting one together.
They can find it at shows. You bring them to the shows, right?
I do bring them to the shows, yeah. I do have them at shows. I always have them with me, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of good stuff.
So when you're writing new material, do you have a go-to person where you vet it through them and you go, hey, check out this song. Tell me if it's any good.
Pretty much my band. I always say when I'm writing songs, I'm writing for an audience of 2. I'm really just writing songs to see if it's something they'd be interested in playing or recording. And that's kind of how we operate. And then once I bring it into them, we share all the songwriting credits equally just because I wouldn't have written any of these songs without Brian and Carrie. And we get in the practice room and we all help arrange them and put them together. And all the songs are always better after they've been filtered through the band, in my opinion.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice to have people to go to on that.
It is, and people that I've known for a long time and that I trust, and there's just 3 of us, so there's less people that disagree with.
That's right. Another song?
Let's do another song. Yeah.
I'm going to let you do it. I'm not singing.
Okay. All right. Okay.
What song is it?
Let's see. What song should I play?
I don't know. Play the one about, if you're prepared to, the one you wrote about your dad and your family and the house.
Oh yeah, This Old House.
Yeah, because we've mentioned it twice already.
We have. We should follow that up for
sure. So people know what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is a song that's on our record. The record's called Travel Light.
Move it back up front.
Yep, put that one up front.
Not sure what the camera angle is doing because I can't see the cameras.
Well, like I said, my parents bought a house in Beverly Hills in 1977, and they lived there until about 5 years ago when they sold the house. And obviously I knew someday that was going to be a thing, but I wasn't quite prepared for it emotionally. Mm-hmm. And ironically, Brian Frank, my bass player, when he was starting his family, they bought a house in that neighborhood. So every week I go to rehearsal at Brian's house and I get to drive by my old house.
Strange.
But I always say I wrote this song because it was cheaper than going to therapy, just to get all the memories out, So the song is called This Old House. It goes like this. This old house was built back in 1964, the year after Kennedy, when the Beatles came ashore. The only home I ever knew, child memories preserved. Every thought I ever had, every song I ever heard. My dad called me up just the other day, said we're selling that old place, Mom and I are gonna move away. We're just too old to keep it up, too old to cut the lawn, and our neighbor's dog just keeps barking on and on. Well, I know you understand that it has to be this way. I always knew the day would come, I didn't know it was today. It's just brick and wood, drywall, paint and stone, but it's a place within my heart where I never felt alone. Now there's a gold river of memories flowing through me now. I grew up underneath this house, I'll miss this old house. I had an older brother in the room next door. I had 1,000,000 Legos spread out on the floor. If these old walls could talk, they would have so much to say. BB guns and broken glass and all the games we used to play. The basement where I built the spaceship underneath the stairs. The bed in which I used to sleep with my favorite polar bear. The posters of my heroes covered ceiling to the floor. Van Halen by the window and Bon Jovi on the door. I front the street in which I learned to ride my bike. Above the stars I wished upon when I couldn't sleep at night. The fireplace I sat in front on the coldest Christmas Eve. In the town I loved, but couldn't wait to leave. It's not the same, so much has changed between then and now. I've got a family of my own, but I miss this old house. Games have kicked the can, and the tree that broke my arm. Burning wrapping paper, setting off the smoke alarm. The bathroom that once got destroyed when some fireworks went wrong. The window I sat looking out when I wrote my first song. The refrigerator that displayed our first attempts at art. The bedroom where I cried at night when the first girl broke my heart. Well, this old house has seen it all, 2 boys grow into men. But But everything has changed and every story has to end. I'm older now and I know that one day I will be too old to climb the stairs, too old to trim the tree. I'm sure my boys will feel the same as I am feeling now, and the circle will complete itself. They'll miss this old house. This old house. This old house.
Steve Taylor is my guest on Acoustic Alternatives today. This Old House can be found on his latest album, which is entitled The Travel Light. Yes, I had it in my head before I started talking, and then I lost it because I was thinking about how you don't want career advice from me necessarily, but when you're doing an In the Round show, make sure you include that one.
Thank you, yes.
I think that is a shining example of songwriting of yours. I mean, it's a relatable story. We all have a childhood.
We do. Everyone had a house, hopefully.
That's the hopeful, yeah. And it just, we all feel something when we hear something about that nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's nice, so.
Thank you. We actually made a video for that song.
I know.
And didn't make it to the final round of the Detroit Music Awards, but...
you were up for enough, though.
It's fine, yeah. But it was great because it was like... a few years ago, my mom gave me a little stick, and it was like all these pictures. My dad used to take slides, in the carousel, and she had them all converted to digital. And I was going through all these pictures, and there's pictures of the room, and everything that's in the song ended up in the video. And I got childhood pictures from Brian and Carrie, too, and we kind of put it together.
So if you want to see Steve growing up, it's right there.
That's right, yeah, you can see it.
What were you going to say? You said but, and I interrupted.
I was just going to say that my parents obviously loved that song. But I remember when I first wrote it, they had sold the house, but they hadn't moved out yet. And I came to them with a guitar. I'm like, I got to play this song. I couldn't get through the song. It was too much. Even when they come to see me now, they want me to play the song, and I said, I'm going to play it. I'm going to look at a fixed spot on the wall, because if I look at my parents, my dad, he's very funny because he'll yell out, "That's true. It's true." He likes to let people know that everything in the song is true.
When I was preparing for the interview, and a lot of times I'll dig in deep. And you sent me all the CDs. Yes. I appreciate that. So I was listening, and really what stood out to me as I was listening to your lyrics, and this is not anything but an observation, you're a sensitive guy.
It's true. It's very true. And we talked about I was a sensitive kid. I was a sensitive, artistic kid. I wasn't much interested in sports, and that kind of went into adulthood. And I think the older I get, especially having kids and having my kids get older, I always say the harder it gets to control my emotions, like the older that you get, and I don't think that's something that I'm going to shy away from. I'm kind of leaning into it with the songwriting, Be human, yeah.
Because we can relate that way.
Right, yeah. I think the older you get, you kind of drop your sort of macho facade, and it just becomes, I always say, tell the people that you love them, because they're not going to be around forever.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Nikki Sixx probably does that too.
I'm sure he does.
As tough as he looks.
Yeah, that's right.
He may not have been your idol.
Right.
But either way.
Yeah.
As I looked as well, I noticed that you've got a nice press quote from Gary Graff, which is a very nice thing to have in your resume, because he's freaking Gary Graff. And he's written about everybody from Springsteen to Alice Cooper to whatever.
He has. He's written so many books. And he's a great guy. I've known Gary for, 25, 30 years. He was a good friend of the Voodoo Hippies, and he's just such a great writer, and very supportive of the local music scene as well.
I've noticed that as well.
Yes,
I appreciate him too. We've met, but I don't think if you said John Bommarito, you'd go like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly who that is." But there's a lot of people in everybody's lives. It's hard to remember everybody. So the other things I think you do, if I've done my research well, you also are an arranger, and you've done at least a film score, if not more than one.
I did, yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. I had a friend of mine that I had known from high school that made an independent film. I mean, got the funding, used real actors from an agency and everything. But he said, "I want you to write the score." He goes, "I don't have a budget, and but I really wanted to do it, And he shot the whole thing on actual film, which because this was I don't know. I remember around the year 2000 that he did this independent film. But I remember setting up a little TV monitor next to my computer and kind of composing while watching the film. And I had to say to him, I said, I can write a full orchestra score if you want. That doesn't mean I have anybody that can play it.
Right.
I don't have the DSO tucked in my back pocket. But I ended up writing it for strings a string, strings, and I wrote clarinet, flute, and then some guitar and piano.
Interesting.
So I was at Wayne State at the time, and I got a string quartet that I knew from Wayne State to come in, and I got him in the studio, set him up in a circle, and I said, play the lowest part you guys all have, and we did it, and I said, now do the next one, and we just kept layering it till it sounded like a full orchestra, and it was just 4 people playing all the string parts.
Very clever.
But I used that same string quartet because I would get hired to write string quartets for rock bands, because I did one for the Voodoo Hippies. We were recording at Tempermill Studios in Ferndale, and our producer was a guy named Dave Feeney.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I'm going to write a string quartet for this. And he kind of went, yeah. I go, no, really? And I wrote the whole thing by hand. This was before I was even doing notation software.
Yeah.
And I just remember when you write a score, you write it all on the same page, and then you copy the parts out for the players. I'd forgotten to copy the parts. So I remember being at Tempermill Studios, and Renee Paquette, who was the lead singer of the Voodoo Hippies, she could read music. So I said, copy the score to this staff paper. I'm going to copy this. And the session was going to start in like a half an hour. And I remember Kid Rock was in the next room mixing something really loud, and we're hand copying these string parts. But it turned out great. And then Dave heard it and spread my name around, and rock bands started calling me because I had one foot in both camps. I could read and write music, but I also understood how rock songwriting works. So I ended up doing, string quartets for a couple of Stuart Frankie records and a bunch of other stuff. That was great.
I'm glad I asked. I like that story a lot.
I've had a long career, John. There's been some interesting twists and turns.
There has. So that was movie scoring. Have you thought about acting at all? This is a weird thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway.
All right.
As I look at your pictures, your press photos and things like that, I look at you and I go, John Foreman, Switchfoot. You could play John Foreman in a biopic of Switchfoot.
Really?
Which I imagine they could do one of those one day. They were big enough.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you are familiar with Switchfoot.
I know the name.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I recognize some of their music.
Meant to Live was pretty big.
That's Meant. Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
There's another one from that same album. I'm drawing a blank on it right now.
Okay.
But anyway, I look at you and I see John Foreman, who you could play. Interesting.
Well, I did some acting in high school. I did theater in high school. I had a great music teacher that, she knew that I could sing because she heard me in bands, and she got me involved in theater when I was in high school. And I remember we did West Side Story, and she said, "You've got to be in this play. We don't have enough guys."
I was Officer Krupke.
You were Officer Krupke? Wow.
I was.
Wow, that's amazing.
No singing.
No singing? I had to be in both gangs.
Oh, wow. Because they were shorthanded.
I had run off stage and changed my clothes.
Wow, that's hard. We had enough guys.
And so I remember it was with the Jets and the Sharks. Nobody looks less Puerto Rican than me.
You're a little blonde for a Puerto Rican, yes.
So I remember I had to wear a wig, and we went to this costume shop, and the only wig we could find was a Beatles wig, which my mom gave a short haircut to. So I wore a Beatles wig to be a shark.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the movies are still in your future. Who knows?
Who knows?
Now, this is not self-serving. This is I'm curious because you said you really enjoyed, you're like the first person to say, I really enjoy your interviews and be my guest at the same time. And you even said to me, I think in one of our conversations before this, I've listened and wondered how I would answer that question.
Right.
Can you think of any of those questions that you would have wanted to answer if I had asked you those questions?
That's I probably should have written them down as they were coming up.
That's
but
okay.
I thought I listened to like I said, Glen Phillips is one of my idols, and I got to open for him once, and that was a huge thrill for me. And not only did I thought your interview was great, I thought that sometimes you listen to podcasts and when people are trying to play it doesn't sound, but yours sounded really good.
Thanks.
Like you could release those recordings as an album.
Sometimes,
I think. Yeah. The other thing I noticed about your interviews, which I really appreciated, it was very subtle, but when you have younger artists in here, you're offering some really solid advice to them.
I'm trying to help.
And
the reason I'm doing this is to help you guys.
Yeah, and I really liked that. Like you would ask people, "What happened to this project?" Well, you should do that. I thought that was great. I'm like, he's actually trying to help these people.
I am. Sincerely, I am. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you don't really need my help, but why not?
No, I'm honored to be here because I feel like I already know you because I've listened to so many of your interviews.
That's me. I'm just being me.
Right.
When people meet me after having been on the radio in Ann Arbor for 15 years, you sound just like it. Of course I sound just like it. I'm just talking to you. I'm not like, hey, it's John and I'm like, there's no fake voice.
There's no fake radio voice?
No, there's just me. I'm just being me.
Right.
But there were no particular questions that stood out, though.
Nothing I come up with.
Okay.
I'll probably think of one on the way home.
Well, that's okay. That was an actual thing I wanted to ask you because you said that. I'm like, well, I wonder what those questions are. Wonder what my favorite questions I've ever asked somebody that you thought were good. What about a job interview question that I hate? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I hate that question.
That's, I've never really done that projecting thing where you try to come up with where you're going to be in 5 years. You know what I mean? Especially once you get to a certain age, you just go, okay, I'm doing what I'm doing. I think, and we've talked about this with the band, which is, it's so easy to release music now, even though no one's buying CDs. With a couple of mouse clicks, you can have global distribution.
Yeah.
You know, so even though no one's making any money off it, you know, it's easy to get your stuff out there. And I just think I just want to keep writing songs and just putting as many of them out there as I could.
I guess the realistic way to ask that question is, where do you want to be? What level do you want to be playing? Like, do you want to be playing listening rooms? Do you want to be playing Royal Oak Music Theater? Do you want to be playing the Palace?
You know, we've talked about it with the band, which is, you know, I don't really particularly like stadium concerts, but baseball stadiums weren't built for sound.
They weren't.
You know, I don't like going to those big concerts. It just feels like, you know, someone asked me what it sounded like. I saw a concert at Comerica Park, and I said, it sounded like you took a boombox and you put it in your bathroom and then went 2 rooms over and tried to listen to it.
There's shows I've been interested in seeing at Comerica Park, and I'm like, nope, not going to do it.
So I like theaters. I mean, I like the Royal Oak Music Theater. Mm-hmm. I like, you know, the Fillmore and the Fox is just a great. These are really great venues to hear or see a performance. You know,
or a listening room like the Arc. Or
the Arc is great, and I live in Lake Orion,
20
so
Front Street.
20 Front Street is
I'll
probably
be there
my
this
favorite.
week.
Well, you really? In fact, the song I played for you, "Uncommon Places," when they were building 20 Front Street, they contacted me because they did that series called "Songs in the Dirt," and I played "Uncommon Places" standing on a dirt floor with a cinder block wall, and and I remember Alan, the owner, walking me around and saying, "The stage is going to be here, and the cafe is going to be here," and I'm just looking around at this abandoned building and saying, "You're going to do this in my lifetime, right? Because this sounds great."
It's a lot of work.
And I came back a year later, and he'd done everything he said he was going to do.
It's a beautiful place.
It is beautiful. And before the pandemic, I was doing 2 different songwriter rounds. I was doing one at 20 Front Street and one at a country bar in Royal Oak called the Dixie Moon Saloon.
Oh yeah.
So I was doing 2 a month before the pandemic, you know, which I learned to do because I have a good friend. His name's J.T. Harding. He lives in Nashville, but he's from Detroit originally. And he's written 7 #1 country songs.
No.
And he really got on the map from writing "Smile" with Uncle Cracker.
Oh, okay.
And he invited me to come to the Bluebird Cafe and play with him, which as a songwriter is like the Super Bowl. It's like, you know, that was the first songwriter round I did was at the Bluebird Cafe. And after that was, I think, in 2014. And then I came back and there was a bar in Birmingham called The Bird and the Bread, who came to me and asked me to start hosting a monthly songwriter thing, which I was thrilled to do. And we did that, I think, for 2 or 3 years, every month. And I met so many talented songwriters just from doing that. You know, a lot of your former guests, you know, I met through doing that show.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, and then, like I said, you know, after the pandemic, that got shut down, and you know, but just started up again at this great new venue in Oak Park called Berklee Coffee.
I have yet to go. I meant to go. I was going to go see Michelle Held and who she was playing with, and then that one got snowed out, and then the rescheduled date I couldn't make. And so,
yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll get there.
You will. Okay. Yes.
Steve Taylor is my guest. You can find music from him as both Steve Taylor Solo and Steve Taylor 3. Probably easier to look for 3 and back up, as we discussed earlier, because at the moment there is no website to point you to. There's Facebook pages. There's SoundCloud. No, SoundCloud?
There's a SoundCloud, yeah.
All those things are out there. We'll put links that I can possibly link in both the audio versions of this podcast and the video versions of this podcast. One final song?
Absolutely.
What will it be?
That's a good question.
Something you haven't recorded yet? Do you feel comfortable giving me a new one?
I'm going to give you a new old song.
Okay.
If that's going to make sense.
Yes. Song you haven't released yet.
It's interesting. It's a song. After doing the Beside Myself solo album, and I was kind of spurred on by, you know, there was a bunch of songs that I wrote when I was in Voodoo Hippies, but I wasn't the lead singer. We had a fantastic lead singer named Renee Paquette who has sung on all of our Steve Taylor 3 records. I drag her out, you know, and make her come to the studio, make her do shows with us because she's my favorite singer. But I wanted to revisit some of these songs just because I missed playing them, because that band, it's been almost 20 years since that band broke up. And when you write songs in a band setting, sometimes, you know, especially when there's 5 people, things get changed around a little bit. It becomes a bit of a committee. And so some of them turned out drastically different than when I wrote them, and some of them didn't. But I'm going to play a song now that I wrote while I was in the Voodoo Hippies. And this wound up on the soundtrack to a TV show called Dawson's Creek.
Oh, well, I've heard of that.
I've never seen the show.
I've never watched it, but
I've never watched it either.
I mean, you know, Paula Cole's I Don't Want to Wait was the theme.
Paula Cole, also an alumni of Berklee College of Music.
And somebody who strangely, when I had her in the studio when I worked in Ann Arbor, was so grateful for me not forgetting that she existed and having her and gave me a kiss. Like, whoa, really? Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's excellent.
She likes me.
That's amazing. That's good. Yeah. Okay, so this song is called Without. And I wrote it many, many years ago. Strangely enough, I've heard you talk with a lot of your guests about the differences between streaming, and the royalties that you receive from that. This one still pops up for me. This is sort of like the gift that keeps on giving, because there's two performing rights places that collect the money. There's ASCAP and there's BMI. So I'm a BMI affiliate, and so every quarter I get a statement, and it looks very impressive. It lists all these different streaming services, and it's pages and pages long, and you get all the way down to the bottom, and you've made $3.26. So,
Hug.
Probably a topic for another time. But this is the song that was on Dawson's Creek, and one quarter I saw my royalties for this song jump up to like $30, and I was like, what? I thought maybe somebody misplaced a decimal point or something went wrong. Netflix added Dawson's Creek. So the sync licenses are still a way to make money. So this is a song I wrote. I mean, I was probably 20 years old when I wrote this song, and it means a lot to me. It was one of those songs where I think it was the last summer I lived at my parents' house, because I was 20. After that, I was renting houses with friends, and I remember just coming home every night and playing the same two chords over and over again, and just kind of free associating, right? So that's kind of where the song came from. So the song's called Without. Alone again, as I often am. Candles burn slowly at both ends. Who am I? Why am I here? Can I learn to overcome this fear? Or will it cripple me the way it's crippled you? And just one simple thing is all I beg of you. And I laugh sometimes, though it's more infrequently. I still love, but now it's everything but me. So let's discuss the greater scheme of things, life itself, and the pain it brings. Well, it's too much for me. Is it too much for you? I guess a change of scene is so long overdue. And she checks her watch, and she dries her eyes, and tells me it ain't that great to be alive. And I must agree with her. And everyone believes in destiny, while fate she laughs in silent apathy. And now I see it all so clearly. The world turns with or without me. With or without me. And she checks her watch, and she dries her eyes, and tells me it ain't that great to be alive. And I must agree with her. And I must agree with her. Well, I must agree.
Nice way to end the interview with that. That's I don't know that song, but I like that.
You.
This is a compliment because it sounds like the best things of the 90s.
It's you can kind of see where its place was in the mid 90s.
I can actually.
And the reason why I wanted to play that song for you is I played it at a songwriter round, and one of my friends says, "Oh, I love that song. Do you have a copy of it?" And I sent her the version we recorded with the Voodoo Hippies, which Renee sings an incredible. She's a very, very powerful voice. But she goes, "Oh, I love it. It's great." She goes, "Do you have a version of you singing it?" And I'm like, "I don't." So for the past couple of years, I've been picking at another little solo album, which I've taken a bunch of songs that I wrote for the Voodoo Hippies, and I've kind of redone them, kind of in my own style, with my own voice, and just kind of the same way I did Beside Myself. Yeah. So that's something I plan on releasing this year, and I've got a title for it. I'm going to call it Deja Voodoo.
Well done. Steve Taylor's my guest. Where can people find your latest gig information?
That's a great question. I have a Facebook page. It's called Steve Taylor Acoustic. So if you go to facebook.com/Steve Taylor Acoustic, I always post my schedule for the week, and you can see all my information there.
I may not get this up this week, but probably what's coming up in the near future.
I'm glad you asked. I'm playing this Saturday at it's called the Hawk Theater in Farmington.
Yeah.
Doing just a solo acoustic, kind of intimate little thing. That's a ticketed show. You can find information on that. On March 31st, I have another songwriter round at Berklee Coffee. So on a Friday. Okay. So and I got a great lineup. Phoebe Holmes from the Keynote Sisters.
Cool.
And Taylor DeRouse and one of my former students. His name's Eric Smith. He's going to be doing it.
Nice.
And then we have a Steve Taylor 3 gig coming up. It was supposed to be at Otis Supply on April the 7th.
Anymore.
Yeah, I think we were all equally as surprised when that news hit.
Yeah.
So we had to scramble to find a new venue, and we're playing at the new Dodge Lounge in Hamtramck.
Okay.
With another band called One Ton Trolley that we're good friends with.
Heard of them. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then our big one that we have coming up is June 24th at the Trinity House.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
very familiar.
Want to get that date out there. Yeah, I know you've been there.
A few times.
Once or twice.
Steve, nice to finally meet you. Thank you for
well.
joining me on the podcast and for paying attention to it and singing its praises, because I do work to make this a place for people to discover new music, and I want to help people.
Yeah, and like I said, I encourage anyone that's listening to this show is go back. There's the archives that you post. There's can find
tons of them.
Yeah, so wherever you listen to your podcasts, look for Acoustic Alternatives with John Bommarito.
Just had a commercial done for me. Cool. I don't even owe him anything for that. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me.
Keep an eye out for some other ones coming up soon, including Stephen Kellogg and Jackie Pappas.